I kind of learned, especially over the last 2 years or so, I'd say, that I had a real addiction might be a strong word, I really value productivity very, very highly. Balance to me has this sort of idea of like a seesaw where I'm sort of bouncing back and forth, right? And we all know multitasking doesn't work. When I'm working, I want to be 100% at work. Doesn't mean I won't take a call from my wife, but I want to be like 100% focused there. When I'm at home, I want to be 100% at home. This was her vision of what it meant to be a successful entrepreneur. I mean, I almost walked out. I was like, this is not it. And I think I'm a rock star because I'm helping out as soon as I come home. The world tends to play trick on you the way it did with me, and it convinced me that my worth was rooted in productivity. That was really hard for me, that I need to transition from doing energy, getting shit done, to being energy is just more along the lines of what we talked about, being present.
Hello, and welcome back to the amazing marketing show where we talk about marketing and we talk about life. And by the way, everything has marketing in it. That's why we do that. Anyway, I am Dmitry Smirnov here with my co-host Chris Gray. Chris, what's going on?
Dmitry, what up?
I am living the dream and excited as always to introduce another amazing guest. And we just have the best guests, don't we, Chris? I mean,
Man,
seriously.
oh, we're gonna let everybody down today.
Okay. There we go.
I was gonna say, don't talk it up too much, Dimitri. Let's undersell it here.
All right. Well, I'm just going based on what I was told because Joe, we're just meeting for the first time, so I guess now my expectations are so much lower. But anyway, Joe Mancini, please give us a little introduction. How do you describe who you are?
Yeah, so up until maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, I would start with what I do. But since I've been in front row dads with you and Chris, I start with I'm a husband, I'm a father, and a business owner. And my business is in um, civil engineering and land surveying. So we work for builders and developers. We work in and around the real estate world, and I do dabble a little bit in that stuff as well. But husband, father, and then everything else is kind of the way it goes.
Man, for those who aren't out there, all three of us are for those who are watching or listening, all three of us are front row dads. And I'm close to both these men, and me and Joe become good friends over the last few years. A man who I respect in so many ways, and you'll see why as this conversation goes on. But Joe, I love how you opened it up by saying, "Hey, a few years ago, you would have started with what you do. Now you talk about you being a husband, father, and then everything else." And so, for the other entrepreneurs out there, and by the way, a little side note: Joe has done some deep work, y'all. As far as people who've worked on themselves and figured things out, Joe's amongst the highest of all my friends. And so, Joe, for the entrepreneurs out there who are hustling and trying to make it happen, what do they get wrong from your observation or your experience? What do they get wrong between balancing the roles of being a husband, father, and businessman?
Yeah, I think the first thing that jumps to my mind is we all struggle with this work-life balance thing, right? And we've heard that phrase, work-life balance. And for me, certainly you want to be have an awareness around that, but I think it's sort of poor terminology or this bad semantics. I want to be when I'm working, I want to be 100% at work. Doesn't mean I won't take a call from my wife, but I want to be like 100% focused there. When I'm at home, I want to be 100% at home. When I'm with my children, I want to be 100% with them. Balance to me has this sort of idea of like a seesaw where I'm sort of bouncing back and forth, right? And we all know multitasking doesn't work. So I think as you're sort of diving into entrepreneurship, I think just sort of knowing what's important to you and also believing that you can do both really, really well. I remember when I first started my company, TSC, I went to a seminar about how to transition from being a W-2 employee to being an owner. Right? So I don't know anything about business. I have zero business acumen. This is perfect for me. And I went to that seminar and I met with other, you know, budding entrepreneurs. And there was a panel of presumably successful business owners there. And those business owners all said you should be prepared to just work around the clock, be prepared to make sacrifices in every other area of your life. And they gave examples. The one lady who was a successful attorney said, my daughter goes to the best school and she gets violin lessons and tutors, but I don't get to see her very much. And I'm not exaggerating. She told this story, and this was her vision of what it meant to be a successful entrepreneur. I mean, I almost walked out. I was like, this is not it. And I didn't know how at that time, but I was firmly rooted in a belief that that's not how it has to be. I get that's how it plays out for a lot of people. And as much as I was against that, 10, 15 years ago, I have fallen into that trap, right? But there's always been that sort of underlying belief that it shouldn't be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. And I think, Chris, you and I have been a lot of people who've managed to figure that out, who succeeded in um, growing their business, growing their net worth, building things without making giant sacrifices at home. And that's part of what being front row dad is about is figuring that out and really keeping in focus what's important. And we say all the time in front row dads, nobody who's ever on their deathbed has said, "Man, I wish I made $1 million more." They do very often say, "I wish I spent a little more time with my family." And uh, that's always in the front of my mind. Is just how do I get there and keep that in focus. So I think that's sort of the thing that really stands out to me that I hope people who are going into entrepreneurship initially they want more freedom, right? That's why we choose this life, not because we always think we're better than wherever we're working before. Maybe we do, but we want more freedom, and often what we find initially is a lot less freedom. And if we sort of buy into that's how it has to be, and you kind of get stuck in that. And some people never move beyond that. They just sort of get stuck in, well, at least I made a lot of money and I send my family on great vacations that I can't go to because I'm stuck at work.
And sometimes the path to more freedom seems like it goes through less freedom, but that may not necessarily be true. I wanted to maybe even get something tactical because something you mentioned about being 100% at work or 100% with your spouse, 100% with your kids. That is, I think, something a lot of people struggle with. I certainly do. But what's something tactical we can do to actually make that happen? Because oftentimes we'll find ourselves with our kids, but thinking about that project we were working on earlier in the day. So, what do you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, certainly we can be conscientious to how we use devices. We can be um, thoughtful about, whether we have the phone on or available, or whether we answer calls, or whether we open the laptop after dinner to just check some emails. That's sort of like the first level. That's pretty easy to just be like, the work day is done. Um, the second level for me, it was I needed a separate workspace. It was hard for me to sort of break those two when I worked from home. So even when I was just by myself, I went to a separate workspace. Again, it made it easier for me to draw a line and say, "That's it. The workday is done," just like a W-2 employee would. Um, I'm moving into my home mode. The harder challenge thing, and I think it's a practice for me. I don't think I'm really there yet. Is it turning the brain off? How do I not think about projects? Because we work on, probably 200 active projects at any given time that are in various stages of development. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to those. There's different parties that have interests. So I think about, oh, I want to call so and so, an update, or we should try this or design this different way. Um, I think that is a practice in your personal development around awareness, um, you know, being where your feet are. Chris turned me on to a book that's been really influential called the Power of Now. It really reminds me about how to be where my feet are, how to be present in that moment. And if I'm fully present with my spouse, with my kids, then there's no room for that other stuff to creep in. And it's just like when you're doing a meditation and sometimes your mind wanders and you say, that's okay. I'm not going to demonize that, but I'm going to bring it back to here. Same thing to happen. It's sort of a constant practice. It's one of the things I don't think you ever perfect, but I think if and I guess the last thing is to give yourself space to and systems to download that information, right? If I wake up in the middle of the night and I have a great idea about a project, I don't hope that I remember it in the morning. I just sort of jot it down, get it out of my brain. If there's something I want to add to my to-do list, then while I'm eating dinner, then I just sort of jot it down in a little book and then I put it aside. Then it's out of my brain. I don't have to spiral around. Will I remember that? How do I remember that? Where's it going to go? It just sort of leaves me that breadcrumb, and then I can get back to being present.
Joe, when you were talking about thinking, um, you know, Power Now, one of my favorite books. The other book that's one of my favorite is A New Earth, all by Eckhart Tolle, both books. And I was re-listening to that book yesterday, and he said something that I probably listened to this book, I don't know, 7 times by now, and I keep getting something new. So yesterday, the new thing I got was you were talking about thinking and how, like, it just happens or whatever. And he compared thinking to to breathing. He didn't put it in these words, but this is how I took it. Where breathing is something that just happens with or without us, right? So we can control breathing, and also it just happens automatically. Same thing with thinking. We can control our thinking, and also it just happens automatically. Um, and I found that to be interesting. And like you said, when the life is meditation, right? So when the thought comes, you just okay, thanks, and then let it go, and that's easier said than done. So one thing I've seen with you is you spent time you spent time focusing on being energy and doing energy, and you were there for a while. So explain to us, what is the difference between being energy and doing energy, and what was your journey like when you were processing that?
It's such a simple concept, but it was just a huge epiphany for me. So a little bit of context leading into that. I kind of learned, especially over the last 2 years or so, I'd say, that I had a real um, addiction might be a strong word, I really valued productivity very, very highly. And that made it difficult for me to transition from doing energy to being energy. And I'll land that plane in a second. But recognizing that I really value being productive and I put a lot of self worth into being productive helped me recognize that when I came home from work, I was still in a doing energy because I live in a doing world. My work is full of checklists, get it done, deliverables, make the call, finish it, get it out. We don't get paid until we finish the thing, right? So it's a lot of doing energy, and that's allowed me to be successful. So I kind of conflated that success with what it, what my self worth was around, right? And how I deliver value to the world, and maybe on a very meta level, why I'm worthy of being loved, right? So I was really focused on productivity. So cue me coming home from work, close the door. I'm like on fire with doing energy, getting shit done. Is that what that room needs? So I kick in the door and I'm like, oh, boom, the trash needs to go out. I'm doing it. Dishes need to be done. I'm doing it. The kids need help with the homework. I'm doing it. Somebody needs to get yelled at for not cleaning up their stuff. I'm doing it. Right. So I'm just kicking ass and taking names. Right. And I think I'm a rock star because I'm helping out as soon as I come home. Um, how that plays out is not nearly as favorable as it was in my mind, right? With my family, right? You're going all day. As soon as you come home, you're shouting directions and you're doing shit. And what you're not doing is speaking to my wife's love language, which is quality time. So while I'm doing all these things, all these acts of service that make me feel like I'm delivering value because I'm being productive, what she's feeling is neglected. You don't want to sit down and spend time with me. you don't want to hear about my day, whatever it is, right? So that was really hard for me. So I understood this idea of that I really valued being productive. I understood this concept of love languages, how my wife and I were different. And then this concept of being energy versus doing energy came in. And that was really sort of the last piece of the puzzle that helped me understand that I need to transition from doing energy, getting shit done, to being energy is just more along the lines of what we talked about, being present, being there, right? And it's not a getting shit done kind of energy. It's a listening kind of energy. It's a holding space for others kind of energy. And I actually have a reminder on my light switch in my office here. It's it's domino, and we think it might be a concept from the One Day book, where it talks about the lead domino. What's sort of the small thing that leads to a bigger thing and a bigger thing, and it's sort of the lead domino where everything else falls into place. So the domino was sort of a reminder to me to, as I'm flipping that light switch off and I'm going from office to home, to switch to being energy, so that when I'm showing up well and I'm doing a good job with it, I open the door and I don't start doing things immediately. I kind of read the room and I see what's needed there. And maybe sometimes my wife needs me to do some things. Um, but more often than not, she'd be just fine if the sink was full of dishes and I just sat with her and we talked about what's going on in the world, what's going on in her world, what she's worried about. And there's always uh, something that we can kind of reconnect on, and that's what she needs. And I'll be perfectly honest, sometimes that's excruciating for me because I'm so much in that doing energy. But it's so important for me to sort of make that switch. Same thing with the kids. Um, I wasn't always bringing home the best energy to help them with what they needed. They might need they may maybe need a little more just being around me versus me giving them direction and telling them what to do and pushing them to do their chores or whatever needs to be done, right? So they need a little more transition. Um, yeah, so that's the doing versus being energy. Again, one of the things that you're never a master of. I think we're always going to be practicing it and trying to get a little bit better.
As long as you're practicing, then you can keep getting better. But yeah, you're probably right. Never a master. One of the things that you said in pre-show was that running a business is like being a dad. And I want to explore that a little bit more because there's probably different energies in your business as well and what it requires of you. Or maybe it's more so of that getting stuff done type of and doing energy. But tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of parallels. I mean, um, the business is something that you're emotionally attached to, and you help nurture it and you help it grow, and you're emotionally attached to um, that it does well. Um, and hopefully you care about the people that are working for you. Maybe not quite like children, but in a way, we're mentoring, whether they're younger than me or older than me. I'm generally mentoring them in their career path within our company, right? And I get to know them very well because we're a relatively small company, and so I'm invested in them succeeding in their life and in their career. And just like at home, when things don't go well, um, I have to take full responsibility for everything. So, if my son gets into a car accident and he needs my help, then you know I have to sort of deal with that. If somebody in my company screws something up, then it's automatically my fault. Whether they did it or I did it, everything, all that flows uphill. So sometimes you feel sort of the weight of caring for that thing so much more than anybody else. You don't want your employees to care as much as you do and lose sleep over it the way you do. But that's kind of how you feel about your kids too. I mean, you want them to kind of be kids and live their life, but you have all of these worries that they haven't even contemplated yet. Um, and I think also in some ways you're dealing with different personalities, just like my two sons are very different people. And I had to learn how to be a different dad for each of them. When my first son was born, I thought I was born to be a dad. This is great. It just felt natural for me. When my second son was born, he was completely different. I thought everything I learned would help. It was completely useless. I had to start over and learn a different way to show up for him, to be the dad that he needed. And that took me about 8 years, to be perfectly honest, to figure that out, or start to figure that out, and sort of make that transition. And what I did, he changed overnight. All of a sudden, we had a much better relationship, and I just understood how to sort of work with it. Um, we do personality assessments. So that I can understand my team members, how they communicate, how they receive coaching. Some people are very task oriented, just the facts, like me, and some people are more people oriented, and I need to make sure that I connect with them before I give them direction, instruction, corrections. A lot of what we do involves correcting things, especially because we have a lot of younger people. We always bring up sort of younger folks, so there's a lot of correction that happens. Just like with kids, there's a lot of sort of guidance and correction that happens. And I've sort of learned how to see where those folks fall on the personality matrix and try to adapt a little bit of my coaching style to what works well for them.
That's I want to make this point because we talk about all marketing is in everything and everything is in marketing. And that was a perfect example of that. Without saying the word marketing, you can market yourself as the CEO or the owner, whoever's in charge of the company, a certain way to your employees, and you can have a one size fits all advertisement, so to speak. But the advice you gave is take the personality test and then customize that marketing to the specific person. Same thing with that you did with your sons. That was
Yeah.
really cool.
So
Super cool. I'm in the process of some things I'm working on. Joe, and what you said lands on that as well. As I really have to nail what you and Dimitri said lands on what I'm working on. Is I have to really nail who I'm talking to
I
and
was just
talk
gonna
to
say,
them
know
in a
your
manner.
audience, right?
You know your audience, man, and that's huge. Something else, Joe. You're out in Jersey. I don't know why, but you're out in Jersey. And
There's some nice places. Okay, Chris, you've probably never been to Jersey. There's good places out there.
I just poop on it because it's Joe. Like I'm sure it's a great place, but ever since
It's
I've known
not
Joe, I just
hot as
keep poop.
Texas, so we got that.
Us East Coasters got to stick together.
That's right.
But with when you're in a big city like that, the argument can go both ways with starting a business. It could be like, hey, it's easier to start a business because there's so much opportunity and so many things you could do. Or the argument can be it's harder to start a business because there's so much going on and it's probably easier just to get a job. I lean towards um I've when people come from big cities and they still do it big, like New York, New Jersey, so on, like I really respect that because to me, I feel like that's kind of hard. And so I've known you for years, but I don't know how your business got started and how you got into this and you built something and you came from nothing. I don't know anything about that. And so for what you care to share, tell us a little bit about how you got into the business and how you got to today.
Yeah, we started from the bottom, now we're up, right, Chris? So to your point, I think it's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, certainly in a bigger market, there's more opportunities. There's also a bigger pool of resources in terms of projects and people and so forth. Um, I think I'm fortunate in that I work in a space where there's always something going on, and I guess we also diversified enough that we weren't sort of too pigeonholed, so we can be sort of nimble and sort of pivot to different types of projects. But I also, speaking to your other question about how I got here, I feel like I'm a late bloomer in entrepreneurship. I mean, I came from a very blue collar family. My family was from Camden, New Jersey, which is a relatively uh, poor area, and my dad was a maintenance worker at a hospital, and my mom was a stay at home mom. And I'm grateful for what they were able to do for us. Moving it out of that city into semi suburban area, and just sort of like the thing we always talk about is the next generation gets a little bit better, a little bit better. Right? So they were just one generation away from immigrants, and then I was the first generation to go to college, and then hopefully kind of continues from there. But I think also there was a scarcity mindset there, 100%, that I had to sort of do a lot of growing to outgrow. And so the idea of owning your own business was completely foreign to me until I was probably in my 30s. I was grateful to have a decent paying job and a career, and I felt pretty secure in that, and gaining competency. But there also, I lived through 2008, which affected our industry quite a bit because it really sort of killed the real estate industry. Had a big impact on the company I was working at, and so that gave me a little bit of pause. But also around the same time, I was starting to get into this journey of not just a journey of sort of internal self awareness and psychology, but also you know what's possible. You know what I mean? The Think and Grow Rich type of vibe, right? So I was starting to consume books like that. I started to sort of be around other people, like another friend of our dad, Jamie Fogger, who I've known for 30 plus years. Jamie was one of those people who really dared to dream a lot bigger than where we came from, and so sort of planted that seed. So that seed being planted and me sort of cultivating it and continuing to sort of learn and grow. I'm now about 15 years into my career and sort of at that threshold point of, you know, I might be an owner in the company that I'm working at, mind you, like a 0.01% owner. And, I could work here for another 30 years and have a decent career and 401k that would be perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that. But I had this other idea that I could have those things and more freedom and be able to help other people mentor and grow. And I felt like being in like a mid to large size company, there was certain bureaucracy to it, and I couldn't do certain kinds of projects. Didn't have the ability to influence our process procedures, and it just some days it was a good place to work, and some days it wasn't. And I didn't think just the grass is greener over there. Let me go to a different company. I just sort of said, I'm in my 30s now. I think now's the time to make the jump. I feel like the market is good enough. Let me just make a run at it. At the end of the day, if I fail, I could always go back to having a career. So I was fortunate in that respect that it wasn't a really really big swing. On looking back, it was wildly irresponsible because I had a young child and a baby. But I guess but that's what entrepreneurship is. It's equal parts ambition and stupidity. Um, and so I just was really excited about trying to not just do the work that we do. I think I say all the time that that's just a vehicle because that's what I went to school for. That's what I learned about. It's really just a mask for the underlying thing, which is I enjoy figuring out solving the problem of how to build a great culture, how to train people, how to coach people, how to mentor people, how to do the marketing, how do you get people to take their work away from the consultant they work with now and give it to you? How do you build those relationships internally and externally? That's a really interesting problem to me that that's what sort of gets me out of bed in the morning more so than the X's and O's of the actual work. So that's what I was sort of pining for, I guess, in my early to mid 30s, and that's kind of what started me on that road. What I didn't know when I started was how important those relationships were. I thought the name on the door mattered a lot more than it apparently does, and I was really shocked and humbled that people that I'd worked with, who I had no intention of trying to coerce them to come work with me, said, "No, we don't really care whether it's just you being in your basement by yourself. We know you, we trust you, we want you to be in charge of our project." And then it just kind of kept going from there. And that's been really it was really eye opening, and it's even now, 10, 12 years in, it still sort of makes me makes me feel gratitude that people put their trust in me and their trust in our company.
It seems like, especially in construction, those personal relationships and proof of character, proof of work, quality is what matters most. And give us a little context of what exactly is it that you guys do? Like, what does a project look like? What's the work?
Yeah. So the work is under the categories of civil engineering and land surveying. So our clients are builders and developers. So if you can imagine, a new housing complex starts with just a vacant piece of land, and they say, you know, what can we build here? Or here's what we want to build here. Can we do it? Or we'd like to build as many houses as possible. How many can we build? And in other parts of the country, this process looks a little bit different, but it's because in New Jersey, we're sort of heavily regulated because we're a little closer together. But generally, the process is the same. We start with land surveying to get all of the existing conditions. What are the boundaries of the property? What are the conditions of the property with elevation and ponds and streams? And are there wetlands? And are there other environmentally restricted areas? And then we dig into what are the zoning parameters that dictate what the development can be there. So we'll dig into zoning codes and building codes and develop sort of a conceptual design for development. That could be residential, industrial, commercial, etc. Whatever they want to build there in concert with whatever the municipality wants to be built there, and try to marry those things as best we can. And then we kind of do all the way I explain it in career fairs is we know our architects design buildings, engineers design everything outside the building, parking, uh, storm sewer, utilities, stormwater management, access, grading. How do we just sort of design the site layout? So we're producing those deliverables, and we're helping our clients um, walk it through that regulatory process. And in New Jersey, that's a pretty heavy lift. I often say that it's like 20% engineering and surveying and 80% walking it through the regulatory process. Um, which is probably the same in DC. Texas is going to be a little bit looser, but that's kind of how it happens on the coast. So a big part of our
DFW, everything goes. I think I'm pretty sure.
yeah. But that's a big part of what we do, and part of why the relationship is so important. It's because we're not just looking for ways to save them money while we're designing it. We're also trying to help them get it done as quickly as possible. So a life cycle for a large development in New Jersey could be 2 years. To get it from that raw ground to I'll put shovels in the ground.
A kind of a transition from what you do with the business stuff. I want to circle back to what I was talking about at the top of the episode. Is I don't know very many men who've invested the time and money into the inner work that you have. Through front road ads, through friends, through the best therapists in the entire world, you've done it. Shout out to Dr. Kelly. Um, with that said, with all this inner work that you've done, Joe, and this question might be kind of big and broad, but here it goes: is of all these things that you've learned and discovered about yourself, what is one thing that you discovered and learned about yourself that you wish you were aware of in your 20s?
Boy, I could write a book. There's so many
Bet.
things. By the way, the reason why I've done all those things is probably because I needed more work than most. Maybe I don't know. I've still got a long way to go. What do I wish? I mean, it's funny. I was thinking about this because I was just on a trip with my 14-year-old son, and it was called a rite of passage. It's basically we were talking about um, how to teach young boys how to grow into men, what that means to us, what it means to be a man, and what it definitely does not mean to be a man. Defining that, um, and I wrote a letter to him, and in the letter, maybe this is the answer to your question. Um, I wanted him to know that he could be a man without giving up or changing the things that were unique and great about him. The things that were really challenging for me in those first 8 years as I was learning who he was and how to be his dad, the things that frustrated me, I also knew the whole time that they were going to be really valuable for him. His persistence, his resilience, his obstinance in a way. I felt like as I was learning how to be a business owner, I was like, this kid already has it. Um, And also, he might be unemployable otherwise, so I hope he makes it as an entrepreneur. Um, but I wanted him to hold on to those things. I wanted him to hold on to also the joyfulness. That's been another part of my journey that we've talked about a lot, Chris. It's just sort of how to get back to really experiencing joy consistently and have access to that. So I talked in the letter about just sort of holding on to those things and carrying them forward into adulthood. Also knowing that the world tends to play trick on you the way it did with me, and it convinced me that my worth was rooted in productivity. My worth was rooted in getting good grades, producing, and behaving a certain way, and getting shit done. I wanted him to know that his worth was rooted just in who he was already, and that his mom and I accept him as he is, exactly as he is, without any conditions. And I think we say that, and it's really hard for people to understand that, really hard for us to accept that and receive that. But that's what I really wanted for him to be able to have that and hold that as he moved forward into adulthood. And I think that would hopefully shortcut him a lot of the anguish that I spent, ages 20 through 40, figuring those things out. Hopefully, he can really hold on to who he is, keep access to that joy, keep access to the things that make him uniquely him, and grow into adulthood and start taking on those other responsibilities.
Whoa. I think that's super relevant to me as a dad too. I've been thinking about that topic. What what is really the difference between being a parent versus just being somebody who coaches, so to speak? And it was that you, for specifically for the children, you got to offer them acceptance and the love without requiring that productivity specifically back, but at the same time you want to teach the productivity, but that's not related to the love and acceptance that they get.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance. Even, I mean, going back to the work and parenting analogy, how do we sort of reward effort because that matters, but also results matter, right? At work, results matter. We have to get shit done. So I don't really care if you tried real hard. I need you to get done. And we have budgets, right? So if you spent 8 hours doing a 4 hour task, that's okay the first time, but it's not okay indefinitely.
Man,
Um,
yeah.
and so we want our kids to be able to get shit done in order to be successful, right? I want my son to be able to make money so that he can do the other things he wants to do, not just for the sake of making money. But I don't want him to make money the way I did at the expense of diminishing himself, right? And I think that's what a lot of us kind of went through is how do I repackage myself in a way that fits into the space that other people want me to fit in or the space that I think I need to fit in order to make money. I don't know the answer, but we'll keep working on it.
Well, life is tricky that way, right? All even the good things you have to do in moderation to an extent, or else it goes off this infinite loop trap, and you get caught up in it. So, like, where do you scale back after you get good at the thing you've been learning to do? Get good at, you're finally good at it, and now you can't actually spend all your time doing it because then you just waste the time effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's been being around other high achieving guys, and I see them sort of transitioning from producing in their line of work to either coaching or overseeing, and just not getting stuck in that, right? Where can I deliver the highest value, and getting comfortable, by the way, with being okay with that, right? Like when I come to work and I do a lot of CEO things, it doesn't feel productive to me. And so that sort of makes me self-conscious, and it makes me sort of backslide into checking a bunch of little boxes. Um, so being around other people who inspire me, help me consistently thinking about buying back my time. And not just for me, but because it also benefits the people that work for me. They get to work on more and different things. They get to learn more. They get to grow their career because I'm not constantly micromanaging things. Um, yeah, I mean, there's might be another microcosm for parenting there too. Is just letting them fail a little bit That's been a big challenge for me as a perfectionist, is letting my team members and letting my children fail.
Yeah, one thing I want to talk about before we end here is uh, in Front Row Dads. It's a big community, and then within that community, you have these things called bands. So think of them as small little men's groups. Dimitri has one. Me and Joe are in a band together, and I noticed that, at least for our band, Joe is the leader. And I see that throughout your life, period, Joe. Like, you lead at your company, you lead at your family, you lead with your friends, and you like that role. You stepped into it. Um, and one thing I want to quickly say is what I like about both of you men is that there are few men in this world that I will just follow in a situation. Um, you have to really earn that, right? To be, I'm not saying I'm some macho alpha, but there's alpha like qualities there, right? And so then to be a leader, an alpha amongst alphas, I think is hard. It's like in our podcast, I follow Dimitri wholeheartedly. And when it comes to this thing, I'm following Dimitri's lead. He's the lead here. Good to go, right?
If
Those
there was
roles
a
are
fight, I'm
solidified.
following Chris. You can stand in front. I'll be in the back.
And then in our band, like we de facto you're the leader. And we're Joe's bros. Like we follow you. And so this ability to lead and then this desire to lead, was this something natural or did you work on it? And if you worked on it, how so?
Oh, it's completely unnatural. 100% unnatural. I mean, I am an introverted person. Um, I didn't ever view myself as a leader. Even starting a company, I didn't say I'm going to be a leader. I just thought that I would sort of quietly build this culture, and I never thought about it in terms of leadership. So I feel like we talk about doing hard things, and I'm thrusting myself into that. I volunteered to be the leader for a band, not because I thought that I would be good at it, but because I also trusted every other guy in that band and in our community to co-lead with me, right? To um, stand shoulder to shoulder with me in that role. Um, yeah, I think it's something I'm constantly working on. It's not just how to lead in the context of a lot of things we talked about earlier, but also just being comfortable with with that role. And I think I've had some evolution on that even in the last couple of years. Like, hey, it's okay, and it's actually to the benefit of those that you're leading to step into that, to be comfortable with it, and not shy away from that's the role that you're here to play. So I don't have a very answer for you there, Chris, but I think it's definitely not natural for me, and then maybe somebody else takes that as inspiration, that you don't have to be sort of type A personality, born for it. I want to do it. That was never on my mind. It was really sort of an offshoot of what do I have to do in order to continue to nurture this seed that I planted, and I want to help it grow. I better really step into what it means to be a leader. Otherwise, I'm going to hit a ceiling, and I'm not going to be able to grow this company. I'm not going to be able to move my family forward. I'm not going to be able to show up the way I want to for these other dads. So I kind of had to keep learning how to do those things.
It seems a lot of times people who are after becoming a leader, they're in it for the power games or something like that. But a reluctant leader is more so someone that people do want to follow. I do want to switch gears though for a second. Is the biggest thing over the last couple of years is AI and robotics, and in your industry, I figure it is having some small or big effect, and I'm wondering what that is.
Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, Dimitri, and not the last kid on the block, to implement that. And certainly in technology wise, and the equipment that we use, um, uh, in surveying specifically, we've gone from survey equipment where it was, a guy looking through a transit and another guy holding a pole, to now we have a robotic equipment that does a lot of things for you. It does scanning. So we went from a three-man crew to a two-man crew to a one-man crew, basically doing the same work. Um, within the software that we use, we look for sort of more automations and that sort of thing. AI specifically, we're just sort of scratching the surface. So I guess we're all just scratching the surface with AI, right? We're still trying to figure out how that helps us automate workflows. So we're using it basically, I think, the way most people are using it, or at least they should be using it at this base level of, how do we help it refine documents, letters, correspondence? How do we help it build SOPs for us and processes? How do we use it to fast track research? Um, yeah, and it's I used AI to help me build a marketing plan because I don't have a marketing degree any more than a business degree. So I said, help me
It's a good
build.
thing you don't have a marketing degree for marketing, because those are pretty useless as far as I know.
So I use it to help me build a marketing plan, and how do I sort of set those benchmarks and what are the things I need to do, and then I sort of refined it and tweaked it. And so where I would love for it to go is to help us with QA QC on deliverables, help it have it help us do coaching. Not that I want to take like the person to person stuff out of it, but we're really concentrated on building out a library of teaching modules where we don't rely upon me having the most experience, having to teach the intern how to do something, right? So how do we build out these training modules to get them at least halfway up to speed, and then we can really deliver value, giving them the insights and the nuance. So I'm curious. I've done some training modules that were AI driven, and so I'm curious about how that could uh, work with us. I think by and large, a lot of people in my industry are really slow to adopt new stuff. And I think that maybe presents an opportunity for us if we keep our eyes on the prize to be able, not necessarily the leading edge of that, but certainly not falling behind.
Joe, give us or tell the audience where they can learn about your business, and if they're in New Jersey. By the way, we have a lot of people in real estate who are doing all sorts of things, whether it's a referral that you might want to give a developer or someone in real estate. How do they find out about working with you?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, we are sort of hyper local. So we're based in New Jersey and we work in New Jersey, Eastern PA, a little bit in Delaware and Maryland. But happy to be a resource to anybody who is interested in real estate or land development in those areas. Our website is tristatecivil.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Joseph Mancini. And email is joe at tristatecivil.com. As I said, I'm always happy to be a resource for anybody who's in and around real estate or land development. We talk to real estate people a lot about understanding land development as opposed to like residential resales. We talk a lot to attorneys and title companies, and we sort of try to give them insights into our world to help them be more effective in their world. And we also hire interns a lot. So, if you have somebody in your life who's a young person who's thinks they're interested in civil engineering or land development, and I'm happy to chat with them as well and just be a resource.
Well, Joe, happy to have you on, bro. I think I we were talking a little bit yesterday and about this episode. I want you to know I think it went super dope, man, and I'm happy with what you shared. So for whatever that's worth, which is probably not much, appreciate you, bro.
I appreciate you. Thank you for reassuring me. I didn't have to work too hard to prepare. That's the way I am. I wanted to make sure I delivered it for you guys. I didn't want to let you down, and I didn't know. I feel like I'm wholly unqualified to talk about marketing, so I'm glad I didn't have to give you too many marketing tips. But you guys pull it out of my stories.
Well, you put on a button up and glasses, and that just made you look professional automatically. So
That's what I was going for. There's nothing else that makes I can look the part.
All right, guys. Check out the link below. Joe Mancini, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, guys. Great talking with you.